I am really, really pleased to be able to share something that is dear to my heart and something that has really helped me to be my authentic self. So my name's Sarah, and I'm a speaker, coach, teacher, author, and nurturer. And I create safe spaces for sensitive, emotional people who feel like outsiders to really get to the root of what has been stopping them from moving forwards. So the way I do this is to accompany them on a journey to shift their past narrative, to overcome their pain, awaken to their truth, and then this enables them to really rise up and become the leaders of their best lives. So I know exactly what it's like to do this, because I went from being a people pleaser, having to be in control of absolutely everything and everybody in my life, being afraid to speak up and speak my truth, and also feeling totally disconnected from who I was. So I was able to make the shift from that to being a passionate coach, teacher, guide, in love with life, in love with my life, and following my calling to help as many people as possible to show up as my authentic self and believe in a future where love and community reign. So if this sounds like something that you would like to know more about, then stick around for this talk. So today I'm going to be giving you some tips about how you can move from feeling like a failure, feeling like an imposter, to believing in yourself and being able to show up as you truly, authentically are. Now, this is the number one challenge of sensitive business women. And I'm sure that if you are here today, you will identify with that. And just one thing before we get started, I want you to know that this can often show up, this feeling of being an imposter, of self-doubt, can often show up when we are about to level up. Now, what I mean by leveling up is when we either have had a shift inside, so we have maybe realigned our chakras, our energy centers, or maybe we have found another layer of something that needs to be released. Or it can also be leveling up in our business when we want to take it to the next level. It's obviously very important to be able to do that. And this is often when the imposter syndrome will also start to show up again. So what I'm sharing with you today is not necessarily a done and dusted technique. These are things that I come back to regularly myself, because obviously on my journey, I am leveling up as a person, but also I'm leveling up as a business owner. So I just wanted to share that with you before we get started. One of the ways that I love to learn is through people who are out there in the general public, who are globally known, and who I really resonate with. And one of these people is Brené Brown, who you may well know, like, and follow. So I want to begin today with a quote from her. "We combat not being enough by pleasing, performing, and perfecting." And this was really true for me for most of my life, if I'm perfectly honest with you. And I feel that this is also behind the imposter syndrome, because we feel, or we can feel at least, as though we're not enough. We're not doing enough. We're not being enough. We're just not enough in our lives and in our businesses. So by combating that, we will step up to please people, to put on this performance, and to be as perfect as possible. Except that doesn't work. That's not how authenticity works. So why we feel like imposters is because of various different things. It could be because of the assumptions that we have or that other people have about us, about our business, and we're not living up to those assumptions. It can also be the expectations that we place on ourselves. As I've just said, it's never good enough. It's never good enough. And it can also be related to society or stereotypes in society, where certain types of people should do certain things. And so if we're not doing those, or if we're not being like we are supposed to be, then we can also feel like we are an imposter, like we're a failure. And that's when the self-doubt can really kick in. So 3 reasons why this can happen. The first one is that we fear or we are afraid of being found out to be imperfect. This can be the number one fear of so many sensitive people in business, whether they're male or female actually, because we strive so hard to put on this image, if you like, put on this show, perform, and to show that we are really, really perfect, that we're so scared of being found out, so scared of people actually seeing behind the mask that we're sharing with the world. So that could be one of the things that's showing up for you right now. The second thing is about the self-doubt. We can doubt, no matter how educated we are, how trained we are, how much knowledge, experience we have doubts about our own skills, about our own talents, and about our own accomplishments. And we will often actually even doubt our success despite all of the proof, despite all of the evidence. If you are in a business on one-to-one, I'm sure that you would get testimonials from your clients. That is proof. That in itself is proof that you are doing a good job, that you are showing up as yourself and you are helping your clients to get the results. But so many of us will actually just ignore that or just think, well, that's normal, right? I'm just doing what I should be doing, so it's normal to get that type of feedback. So this can lead us down then a negative spiral because we don't even acknowledge the proof, the evidence that we have to show us that we have these skills, talents, and that we can accomplish things. Another thing that can also come up with self-doubt is when we hear that little inner critical voice. Now, I'm not talking about your intuition, that's something totally different. I'm talking about that little nagging, persistent voice, or it could be on your shoulder or wherever it is, okay? But it's telling you that you're not enough, and it's giving you this self-doubt. So I would encourage you to identify whose voice is it? Is it your own voice, in which case then you can deal with yourself if you like. But if it's somebody else's voice, it's very important to see who that is. It could be a teacher from way back when you were a child and you did something wrong at school, which then led you to doubt your talents, for example. So it's really interesting to get a bit curious about whose voice is it if you are feeling this self-doubt. And this voice will obviously then create a lot of limiting beliefs, which I'm going to talk about later on today during this talk. And the third thing that can show up about why we feel like an imposter is related to our self-worth. And when we feel that we don't deserve what's coming to us, we don't deserve our own success. And a lot of the things that can happen will lead us to think that we really are not worthy of what we would like to bring into our lives. Now, this can be true for our personal lives and obviously in our businesses as well. And this happened to me because I was really, really scared, in fact, of everything that I was building up in my personal life and in my business just falling down, because at one point, the universe, if you like, or somebody would come and take it away because I didn't deserve it. And I realized that this was related to my childhood. And so I've since been able to work on that and everything is okay now. But this could also be showing up for you, this feeling of, I don't deserve it, I'm not worthy of it. And that can also feed into this feeling of, I just can't be myself. So I just mentioned limiting beliefs. And for me, there are three main things that can actually also stop us from believing in ourselves. Now, the first one is feeling like a failure. Now, this is very, very common in people who are perfectionists, whether or not they know it. So we feel like we are a failure. And what happens is, because for us, whatever we do isn't perfect enough, we are going to dwell on what we see, at least, as failures and flaws. Because when we do that, we are providing ourselves with the proof that we're not cut out for success. And then we will never actually achieve what we want to achieve because of all these limiting beliefs, because of all this fear that's coming up. It's very, very difficult to achieve anything when you are coming from a fear energy. a lot of the time as well, if you are a perfectionist, you're going to set yourself impossible deadlines. You're going to take on far too much work in a very, very short period of time. And in a way, you're setting yourself up for failure because you haven't factored in your time, your available time, especially if you're a mum, for example, and you've got the family to look after as well. Life will often throw curveballs at us and unforeseen events and circumstances, and we tend to not factor that in. And as women, we tend to not even connect to who we are and our energy levels, which obviously will fluctuate on a regular basis and even on a daily basis, right? So we ignore all of that and we set ourselves impossible deadlines. So when we don't meet those deadlines, we're really happy in a way because we're saying, right, well, yeah, I'm a failure. I knew that I wouldn't be able to achieve that. So the idea is to really, really be aware of that. Be aware of, are you actually setting yourself up for failure by doing some of the things that I've just mentioned? The second thing is we feel that we need to know everything about everything before we actually start showing up as our authentic self. And this can often be people who would like to see themselves as experts, but think, I still don't have enough experience, knowledge, training, whatever. Now, in my humble personal experience, for now anyway, there will always be something new to learn. There will always be something new to experience. And there will always be something new to uncover. So if you look at that as an expert needs to know everything about everything, there are no experts, basically. That's how I look at it anyway. And people who will identify with that often never even ask for help either. Now, we can't be good at everything, and this is something that I learned the hard way because I wanted to be everything to everybody and to never ask for help. And that's also linked to my childhood. But I never used to ask for any help whatsoever. So things that would take an expert 5-10 minutes to do would maybe take me a day to do. And so obviously you can see by doing that, you are taking your own valuable time in your area of expertise and using it in an area where you're not an expert at all. So this is also having a detrimental effect on yourself and your business. And the last thing that is very, very common is, as I mentioned before, this feeling of not being good enough. Now, this can often be the case for people who are actually just natural geniuses. So if you're a natural genius, basically you've never learnt what you know. And in today's society, which is very hooked on diplomas, certifications, accreditations, quality audits, all the rest of it, there has to be proof. There has to be proof to what we are doing. And it has to be approved by certain bodies. Now, I'm not saying that some of us don't need that, because obviously depending on the area of work we're in, there is a need for certification and accreditation. So I'm not saying that that's not a good thing. All I'm saying is that when we have natural talents, it's very, very easy for us to ignore them or to not bring them into our lives simply because, as I've just said, you can't prove them. And this will lead us sometimes even to reject those natural talents. And I just want to share one of my examples, which is my intuition. That's a natural talent. I've never learned it, although you can learn how to tap into your intuition. It's just something that I've always had and never learned how to have it. And I hid that, A, from myself, and B, from practically everybody else for very, very, very many years, and have only recently started to openly speak about my intuitive side and how I bring that into my business. And one of the reasons was because I was very worried, and we'll come on to that in a minute, about being enough, but also about the comparison and about the judgment from other people. So all of this can show up and sort of compound, if you like, the feeling of being an imposter. So if you have a natural talent and you are not wanting to use it or you're scared of using it, I highly invite you to just start sharing that with people who you know are supportive of you and your business, and people who are there and maybe who've already walked that particular path as well. Because by doing that, you no longer feel alone and you're able to lean into your natural talents much more. And that is also part of showing up as your authentic self. And the last thing I want to share with you about this not feeling enough is just to take away the word enough. So for example, I'm not, successful enough. So you would need to take away obviously the not in enough and just to say I'm successful. Okay? And see how that sits with you. And I'm going to be sharing a technique that you can use with that example in a minute as well, how you can transform a limiting belief or something that's holding you back into something that's going to move you forward, or at least help you to move forward. So I just need to have a little sip of water because I can talk a lot. Okay, so this leads me now to the second part of what I want to share with you, which are my 7 tips to getting over feeling like you're an imposter. So the first one is to stop over preparing. Now this is a biggie for perfectionists because we will tweak and retweak and re-retweak anything that we ever do. So obviously, depending on what you want to deliver and who you want to deliver it to, you may need to tweak things, but don't do it for everything. It's more a case of what do I feel needs to go out now as it is, and that is good enough, and what actually does need to be reread and maybe tweaked a little bit. So that's the first advice I would give you. Just stop over preparing. The second one, which can be linked to the first, is stop procrastinating. Because over preparing is one of the ways that procrastination shows up. Okay? Because when you take more time to prepare, then you're obviously delaying the time when you actually share your content, for example, with the world. So just stop doing that. Stop doing that. The third piece of advice is to express your feelings. It's okay, even as a business owner, to show up when you're not having a good day. And I've learned this as well very, very recently. Because when we do that, we are showing our authentic side, and we are also showing other people that, we go through things like they do. We're not this guru, we're not this like idol on a pedestal, unless that's something you want to be. I personally do not at all. So I feel it's really, really important to just show up and express how we're feeling. And it can be obviously as well happy feelings, positive feelings, joyful feelings. It's not all the doom and gloom as well. But all I'm inviting you to do to be able to show up more as your authentic self is to show up and express your feelings as well. Okay. The fourth thing that I think is really, really important is finding your inner resources, because we all have resources within us. And what do I mean by that? It's things that we do naturally. So it's sort of linked to our natural talents. But it can also be our values, our core values, our attitude to life, and our strengths. What are we really, really good at? What are we really, really strong at? Okay, and our gifts and our desires, all of these are inner resources. And once we start to tap into them, it also makes it easier then to show up as our authentic selves. 3 more things that I want to share with you. The next one is owning your success. Now, this can be a difficult one for certain people, because when they compare themselves to other people and other people that they think are successful, then for me, they're setting themselves up for failure. Because when we want to own our success, the first thing you need to do is to define what success means to you. So for some of you, it could be earning 6 figures, and that could even be 6 figures a month, let alone a year. For other people, it could be having that brilliant work-life balance that a lot of people talk about. For other people, it could be having a brilliant podcast and getting their message out to the world. So whatever it is important to you. So the first thing to do is define what success is for you, because if you're just moving forward with no real idea of what you want to achieve, then that's also linking back to the perfectionism. You're never going to get there, right? Because you don't know where you're going. So define your success, and then when that starts showing up, you're going to be able to own it. And that is really, really important, because the more you own your success, the more successful you will feel, and the more you will be able to show up like that. The last two pieces of advice for moving on from feeling like an imposter is to create what I call a workable action plan, which is in alignment with your authentic self. And I've actually renamed this a heart-based roadmap, because I think it's much more feminine and it's much more positive and it's much more nurturing. And I actually can do this with you during one of my offerings, which is the Inner Power Hour. So I'm going to be talking to you a little bit more about that at the end of this talk. And the link will be in the comments as well. And the last thing I invite you to do is to reframe your thoughts. Now, this goes back to the limiting beliefs. And one of the ways that we can do this is a technique that I believe anyway was invented by Anthony Robbins. I'm sure you've all heard of him. And it's the belief table. So basically what you do is you take one of your negative or limiting beliefs, something that's holding you back. So for example, I feel like I'm a failure. You transform that into a positive belief. So for example, that could be, I am successful, because it's very, very important with the positive belief to be directive. So I am, or I have, for example, okay? So I am successful. And then your job is to identify at least 4 different situations or 4 different pieces of evidence that will support that sentence. So I am successful. So once you've defined your own success, what that means to you, then it's obviously much easier as well to do that with I am successful. And then once you have that, then you've got proof. So your limiting belief is no longer a limiting belief. So that is a way to reframe your thoughts. I just want to finish with a reminder from the wonderful Brené Brown, because I do love her, as you know, and I love her quotes. And so this is a quote as well that I think really, really helps us all when we are maybe scared of showing up as our authentic selves. So she says, let go of who you think you're supposed to be and embrace who you are. And this is something that I help clients either on a one-to-one basis or in a group setting to do, because we have so many expectations on our shoulders. Some of them placed by society, some by our family, some by ourselves. And when we are actually able to embrace who we fully are, life becomes so sweet, blissful, and joyful.